Good afternoon and welcome to today's panel on navigating the STEM workplace. So, if you were planning to be somewhere else, you're navigating the STEM workplace. So, welcome. You're here. I'm Jackie Berry and I'm with 3M, and I have the privilege of working for 3M and managing our philanthropic investments. In particular, we focus on supporting girls and trying to get more girls and underrepresented students engaged in STEM. So I don't know about you, but I'm really excited about this panel. I'm delighted to learn from our panelists today a little bit more about what it means to be successful, for a woman to be successful in STEM. So each of our panelists brings a unique perspective and wealth of experience, having made significant strides in their respective fields. They are leaders, innovators, advocates who have not only overcome challenges, but are paving the way for future generations in STEM. So why is this topic important? And this is something that we grapple with at 3M all the time. But 3M is a science company. We're also a manufacturing company, and we are always looking for top STEM talent. But today in this space, there are too few women. Currently, women make up only 28% of the STEM workforce. The numbers are even smaller if you start looking at those specific areas, such as engineering, where I think women are about 16%. And then if you start to look at women of color, you are looking at 5% in the workplace. So why does this matter? It matters because STEM jobs are growing at a faster rate than jobs in any other industry. And we also know that if we have diverse teams working on projects, you're more likely to get better outcomes in terms of the solution. So it's really and truly important. And we're happy that you guys took some time today to actually talk about this. So without further ado, I want to talk about what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to move beyond just the stats, and we are going to look at the lived experience behind the numbers, how women navigate challenges like gender bias, isolation, the pressure to constantly improve themselves, and more importantly, how they overcome these challenges. So let's learn about resilience from today's panelists. So it's truly my pleasure to introduce these very accomplished women. We have Monica Adya. She is Dean of Rutgers School of Business on the Camden campus. Joanna Everitt. Joanna is Vice President, Consulting Services with Life Sciences, CGI, and Michele Zolezi. Thank you, Zolezi, General Manager, Pure Soul, which is a division of Earl. So without that, we'll get started. So I'll ask the first question. You guys start thinking of questions. I think at the very end of this discussion, we'll open it up for questions from the audience. So our first question to the audience is, so to kick things off, could you briefly share your journey in STEM, what sparked your interest in the field, and how did you know that this was a path for you? So your journey, your interest, and then how did you know that this was a path for you? The other thing we'd love for you to include are those key influences or turning points that encouraged you to pursue a STEM career. Okay, that's a long question. So if you have questions, let me know.
Any
Monica,
particular?
Yes.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay, great. So thank you for the introduction, and I'm really glad to be on this panel. We made some great connections today. But my area is information systems, information technology, and my discovery, did not start off in a STEM career, and born and raised in India. And of course, the standard stereotype is, oh, you're Indian, you must be in IT. Well, back then, and I'm dating myself, computers were just coming into the market. The IT industry was not where it is today in India. And so I really credit my father for getting me into the field, because he came to the US in the mid 80s. And he came back and very excitedly said, whatever you do, you must learn computers. Because when I go to the US, everybody knows people are learning how to use computers. So out of respect or whatever, I said, I'm going to try a programming class. And of course, that's the worst way to start, is a programming class. But I actually loved it. The logic, the structure, being able to type a few lines of code and see an output was very interesting. What I wasn't sure was whether I really wanted to do this for the rest of my life. And so, but what the programming class did for me is now I was IT savvy by that experience. And so I got a job in selling computers at that time, which of course is not, I'm not a marketing salesperson. But what it did for me, and that probably was my turning point, is when I would go in to sell computers, I had to go in and look at the organization that I was trying to sell to and say, this is what computers are going to do for you. And so that was one element that I really started enjoying, is going into an organization and saying, these are the ways technology can change your company. And then the second piece was, we can put technology, but as long as, if people are not ready to use it, it's going to sit there. And so part of my job became not only transitioning the organization to technology, but also training their employees to use the technology. And I think once I saw the holistic impact of the field, there's a development side, there's an organizational side, there's a people side, that really got me interested. And from that point on, I came to the U.S. to get my to do my graduate studies, and did my a master's in computer systems management. Really enjoyed the academic environment, and of course decided to do my PhD. And so that's my journey up until now. So when I look at my influences, it's really started at home. And then I had two fantastic faculty in my graduate studies here who kind of nudged me on, and that's where I am today. It's been 40 years of just fantastic experience in the IT field. Did I answer all your questions?
You did. You got them all. Joanna, do you want to try it now?
Yeah, I don't know if I can come behind that with that was incredibly comprehensive. That was awesome. So yeah, early on, I was thinking about this as I was prepping for this session. And really, that's such a great question. What are those things? What are those pivotal moments on our journey that help that led us eventually here? And what are we doing now? And that's going to lead us into the future. So early on, just as an elementary student, I just loved math. I mean, it makes sense. There's no it's black and white. There are no questions. There are only answers. And there are boundaries, and it's safe. There are no unknowns. You can just figure it out. And I felt like my brain was just fired up with logic. And I had some really good teachers, fun teachers in my elementary and high school that made math kind of into competition. And I was always competing with those guys, like always, and there were some girls in there too. We were just, there was just an unbiased competition and fun and learning. And, I take a lot of those elements. I know my team, I'm hoping they would say this, we've got we do really, really hard work. We face challenges every single day. We're up against the wall, getting things done. But one of the things that I learned from that is we can have fun doing it because we're good at it. And we can learn from each other and almost make it into that fun environment. So logic number one. And, then as I moved into my career, as I was younger, kind of early on, it's like, there's a whole big world out there. Like, what am I actually going to do with this talent? I didn't have a clear, I'm going to be X. But I was open to opportunities in my younger, like early career, just open to what will be, I will try. And then probably about 10 years in, I started getting really intentional about exactly what I wanted to do, like very much intentionally diversifying my career. And that was about that point. Let me just backtrack a little bit. Right after I graduated from my undergrad, I was getting married immediately at age 21. And I found out the week of my wedding that my mother was diagnosed with leukemia. And I just graduated with my biology undergrad. And so that was such a journey. I was thinking as I'm talking, everyone can raise their hand and say, yes, I've been touched by someone who has had, either myself or someone I love, who has had a medical need that has been solved by the healthcare industry, or that is, that scientists are working desperately to solve, to save and improve lives. And that became, when I knew that I had the ability to fit somewhere in the ecosystem of saving and improving lives with science, I never look back. It's a profound mission. So, and influencers, teachers, mentors, leaders, managers, and my network of really good friends who are like-minded in this way.
Awesome. Thank you. Michele?
I'm just so honored. They're just amazing women. And we've actually became very good friends in the interim. But my name is Michele Zolezi. I'm the general manager for Pure Soil, which is a division of the Earl Companies. Earl is a heavy highway construction company. We have several asphalt manufacturing facilities. We have a transportation division. We have heavy highway construction, residential, commercial construction. I'm just trying to give you an idea of where I come from. So I do environmental affairs for all of our divisions. And I have a science degree in environmental science. So right here from New Jersey. So I started out as an environmental consultant. So I was in the industry for my total industry time is about 30 years or so. And I wound up starting with some wonderful professors in college. I've always liked science. I've always done very well. So at an early age, that's how I got involved with that. And then I also did, while I was in college, did an internship with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. So originally being on that side, and I'm sure some of the regulators that I'm actually very good friends and colleagues with now would laugh when I say, doing the internship, I was like, environmental consultants, they're crooks. No way. You shouldn't do that. They're trying to get by with development. That's not necessarily the case nonetheless. But during that time, I wound up going and doing some environmental consulting work. And it's been really fabulous. And what I do every day now is we're responsible for the P&L and all the operations for Pure Soil, which is the soil management company for the Earls. So we actually bring in contaminated soil. We're doing recycling. I like to think I'm making New Jersey a better place here, and it's very exciting and very rewarding. And we work with, municipalities, we work with developers, brownfields redevelopers. We're working on projects all throughout New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. And I just think it's absolutely fabulous. I think there's a lot of cross-reference with our industries, and anybody in the STEM industry works together really well. And I think it's been absolutely fabulous.
Awesome. I think great answers. My one takeaway or two takeaways from that would be purpose and passion. I mean, I heard it, I think, throughout all of your responses. So thanks so much for that. The next topic I think we want to talk about a little bit is continuous learning. We all know that continuous learning is so incredibly important no matter what field you're in. So I wanted to ask Joanna this one, if that's okay with you, and you guys can feel free to chime in. How do you stay ahead of the curve and keep your skills up to date in such a fast-paced environment? You talk about all the work that you and your team are doing. How does that work? And then what strategies or habits do you recommend for fostering continuous learning in a work environment?
Yeah, thank you. I love that question. I'll talk about the strategies and the habits, but let me just start with that continuous learning piece. It's such an interesting thing to think about because it's really kind of just woven into the fabric of my daily life. And I don't know when that actually happened. Like, I can't say like I intentionally did this one day and decided that this is how my life was going to be. But like a day in the life of Joanna is to, wake up, know my plan the night before, know who I'm going to be talking to. But I'm always probably 3 times a day on LinkedIn. Probably 3 times a day, just scanning through. What are my people doing? Like, what's going on? What am I learning? What are the people I've connected with, the companies I've connected with? What are they talking about? So that is the most important thing, I think, and not just LinkedIn, your actual network, like picking up the phone and calling people, to talk to people and understand what challenges people have. I was thinking of the learning from the perspective of, okay, how am I going after information and then consuming, digesting, and then and digesting it and applying it. But it's really about learning from each other. I think that's the first thing. That's what we should all be focusing on doing, putting our heads up, looking other people in the eye and understanding, what they are worried about and how can we learn and solve challenges together. The second piece, and this is so interesting. So I'm a mother of 3 boys, and when my son was graduating from high school, he was like, oh, he had to do this little senior blurb on the screen, and then one of them was like, oh, who's your hero? Well, he told me it was me. Of course I started bawling. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, Mom, we were in elementary school and you were going back for your MBA and we were doing tests and quizzes together, like at night. We're like doing our homework. You're doing your homework. You're learning. We're learning. And so at age 36, I went back. And I have a biology undergrad. I'm an analytical chemist, and I was working in basically early drug development, benchtop automation and robotics for drug development. And but people were not listening to me. Like, I could see how we could simplify processes. I could see how we could build teams and build organizations and use robots to really scale what we're doing and to get more data, to make better decisions faster. But I couldn't articulate myself the way that people wanted to hear it. You know, we think we're saying something and we think it's explicitly clear. We think we're advocating. We've got a great business case. But if you can't talk the talk and you don't have the lingo and you don't have the skills to be able to communicate at the level that the C-suite is communicating at, it's a tough, for me, some people can do it. Some people can teach themselves. I needed to be taught. So I was like, I got to go back to school for my MBA because I need people to listen to me because I know I've got some things to say. So I did that. Age 36, went back and I finished up when I was 39. And that was just a game changer for my career because it gave me a perspective I never could have taught myself and I never would have had. So that's that. So continuous networking, seeing what people are talking about, really listening to challenges, going back to school. If you've got something inside of you saying, oh, maybe I should learn this new skill. Maybe I should go back to school, but it's never the right time. It's never the right time. It's never the right time and it's always the right time. So if you've got that thing gnawing inside, you just have to listen and you just have to say yes. And I look back right now and think, how is it possible that I actually did that? I have no idea. You just do it. I think everybody, one of us wakes up every day. We just do it. So that's that. And then the last thing, and I think most of my team knows this, I really love to read about influential leaders and people who can inspire us to be better leaders because we can develop our technology and our skills, but we also, every single one of us is a leader. So my go-tos, my number one, I would say is Amy Edmondson. She wrote The Fearless Organization and she became she essentially established the idea and popularized the idea of psychological safety in the workplace. And if you feel safe and there's all the science behind your central nervous system, when you're relaxed, you're able to be confident to speak up, and then innovation happens when you're comfortable and safe to be wrong. So Amy Edmondson is number one. Simon Sinek, Finding Your Why. That was a game changer for me. I had a small work group at a previous company that did a book study on Simon Sinek, and we walked through Finding Your Why. When you know your own value system and you're led by that, that's really powerful too. David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. He overcame many challenges in his life, and I would encourage you to read that if you want some inspo. There's a lot of F-bombs are in that one, but he's pretty hardcore. So be warned. But those are just a few examples of what I've done to kind of bring continuous learning into the fabric of my life without really even knowing it. So thank you so much for the question.
Oh, that's awesome. I think one of the things too is that point of self-awareness. What do I need? And then trying to figure out and make the time to make it happen. I think that's really cool. Do you guys have anything you want to add?
I was just going to say, Joanna, your MBA story as a business school dean, I love it. No, great suggestion.
All right. Well, we're going to go to another topic, challenges. So we know that, we all face challenges in our workplace. And so we really want to talk a little bit about, women in STEM and the unique challenges that you face in this male-dominated space. So, Michele, this is a question for you. So there are, these are male-dominated industries. So can you share how you found a sense of belonging and community in your work?
That's a great question. Thank you so much. It's very interesting because this topic is actually very germane to my journey here. Being in an environmental consulting and construction industry, you can only imagine that when I first stepped in the room, I was likely the only female in the room, and for quite some time. And it's definitely changed over the years. So getting to the answer, but what I will do is I would love to share some examples, and I'm sure that people who have been in my shoes can appreciate this. As a young professional going into doing field work. So nowadays, sometimes I'm in suits, I'm in business meetings, I'm speaking on panels, but back in the day, I was in work boots and PPE, protective personal equipment, and going to job sites. And I worked for a company, and the name of the company was a consulting firm, very well respected, called Dan Raviv Associates. And I show up in this terrible neighborhood in abandoned buildings to meet a driller out there. And when I show up, the gentleman comes out. He's very interesting looking. And he says to me, "I'm here to meet Dan Raviv." And I said, "Hi, I'm Michele, and I'm from Dan Raviv." And he goes, "You're a woman." And so My only response was, oh my gosh, you're right, I am. And and so that point is, sometimes it's okay to laugh at yourself, or, just kind of live in that moment, because after that, we actually established that we were both from the shore, and he was an avid boater. And we became actually very good colleagues and friends from that moment. But he was very gruff around the edges when I first met him. And it was very interesting, that kind of like demeanor that I had at that early on moment. Then moving forward, some of the other quick examples are, I'm in a meeting trailer at a construction site. I'm sitting at the table. There's there's a lot of people in there, maybe like 50 people or so. Everybody's shoved in, and men are getting very passionate, as we all do about certain things. And they're saying, no, this is your responsibility and this is yours. And they start swearing and cursing. And then all of a sudden, they're like, oh my God, there's a woman in the room. Talk about nails on a chalkboard. So like embarrassing. Just treat me like another professional. And I said, gentlemen, I appreciate the courtesy. As long as you're not swearing at me, let's just move forward and business as usual, kind of really deflecting, which is just very interesting, because when I first walked into the trailer, they said to my colleague next to me, who actually was a subordinate, they said, oh, you brought your secretary. And he said, she's actually my boss. So with that being said, there have been a lot of times that, things are very different now. I work with incredible women, but incredible men. And just because I'm an advocate for women in this industry does not mean that I disparage men whatsoever. I work for a family-owned company, and the 3 owners are men. And I have to tell you, they have a great respect. There's a great demeanor, and we just work really well together. I am the only female leadership team member that's responsible for a revenue division. And I am extremely grateful to them for affording me the opportunity to actually creating a career path for me within the organization, because they saw my potential and they valued me. So for that, I'm extremely grateful. Surround yourself with, people and professionals in the industry. It's all about mutual respect. I recommend that people really know your business, be authentic, know what you're talking about. And in those capacities, you remain true to yourself, and people will respect you in kind.
That's awesome.
I hope I answered all the questions.
No, I think that's fantastic. And, one of the things, as I mentioned, I work in philanthropy at 3M. And one of the things that we're looking at is what can we do to try to get more women into those STEM fields, so that you have more people that look like you, that you can relate to, that will go in and hopefully make it a little bit easier. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So still along the line of barriers and setbacks, Monica, I have a question for you. How do you stay motivated when you're confronted with barriers and setbacks in your work?
Sure. It's multiple things. I think, Jackie, earlier you had used the phrase self-awareness, and I think I really rely on that. So one of the things I try not to do is ruminate too much, and because I this is not scientific, but I know for me, rumination and problem solving have an inverted U curve. It helps for a little while, but I think the moment it goes beyond too much, I know it stalls me.
It is scientific, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, it's neuroscience.
Oh, awesome. Okay, there you go. So it came from
We learned
somewhere.
so much from each other already.
Go on. We can talk about it.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear more. So a lot of it is just saying, okay, something happened. You dwell on it for a little while, and then just kind of say, okay, what's my next step forward? So it goes back to just, some of my roots. My mother was a big influencer there, where she said, okay, how is this helping you? And you step back and say, yeah, this is not really helping me when I'm thinking about. So I tend to take a little bit more of a positive, okay, we've encountered something, let's move forward. But the one thing I don't do is allow that situation, whatever that may be, where there are elements of discrimination, to let go. I mean, you've got to highlight that, and you've got to point that out. The barriers, a lot of it is stakeholder engagement. I mean, you have to step back and say, where are the barriers coming from? And are they within me, within my team, or is it outside of me? And I think there's a couple of elements that you can control, which is within you and within your teams. What is outside your teams, you really have to start engaging And that's a significant part of what you do. Now, that's my work practice. I want to highlight that. But I also have some personal practices which really help me remain motivated. So one thing I do always is when I get up in the morning, I always think about what am I looking forward to? This is what I was looking forward to today. So instead of kind of stepping back at the end of the day saying what was good for me, it was really how do you start the day positive? And then Fridays, I tend to work from home, which is a lot of catch-up days. But one of the things I always try to do is look back at the whole week and say, what were the big things that stood out for me? What problems stood? How did we solve it? If it's not solved, what do we need to do? So there's certain personal practices that I always follow to just keep myself motivated. A lot of times I can't solve these on my own. And I think you have to then rely on your network of mentors and friends and say, look, I'm struggling with this. And I've always been very independent. That's how I'm the oldest child. I think that's what it does to you. But it's a conscious practice for me to reach out to my network and say, look, I need your thoughts. And many times I've got lots of positive men and women who I can turn to both in my network of friends. And that really keeps me grounded. So.
Awesome.
Do you mind if I add
No,
something
please.
as well?
Yeah.
That was fantastic. And when I think about overcoming challenges and something that's difficult and I'm confronted with, 100% like absolutely the network, because what I think we often get caught up in is, shoot, I found this problem. I should know how to solve it. I. All of us, it's like, wait, what? How do we think we know everything? No, we need each other. We need to be vulnerable enough to say, okay, I found this problem. Let's talk about it, because there's no possible way I can know there's no way I even should know everything. Nobody has all the answers. So I think recognizing that it's at every level, I think our first natural instinct is to think, I'm getting paid to do this job. I should be able to solve all these problems. And it's so insular. I think that's the first thing, is just like, let it go and be like, I know what I know. Let's get our heads together and solve it. It's going to be so much faster. It's going to cause you a lot less stress. So that's one thing about overcoming challenges. Then the other thing I think about building resilience in your life, like really forcing yourself to do some hard things and do it. And then look back and be like, oh my God, I did that. And then when you are confronted with a challenge, you can reflect on that resilience you've built. For whatever, people do different things in their life, but mine is with running. And I've done a few marathons, and I just think, okay, I finished a marathon. I'm not winning them. Okay. I'm also mostly walking them, but I do them and I think, okay, that's a big deal. And I can disassociate with the current challenge and think, okay, I overcame something hard. I can do hard things. Let's go. So that's something. I don't know if you had
Actually, really quickly, just to piggyback on that, a couple things my takeaways are, generally speaking, you don't know what you don't know. And I can't be an expert in every area, but what I can do is know the people to call, surround myself, or create your group or your go-to people, or even now they have a LinkedIn. It's right. Like before I had to, pick up the phone and call people. So really like surround yourself or engage in a team of people that you can call to make that call. And I think that's important. And I think also to engaging with your group. And just, and it's okay to say that you don't know something, but I'll get back to you on that. And I think that becomes with maturity in your industry and your profession, and being super confident about what you don't know. And it's okay to say what you don't know, what you know and what you don't know. And just saying to people, hey, I'm not really sure about that, but let me get back to you. Because I feel like that's really respected. And I expect that in kind.
Yeah. No, these are really good points. Thank you so much. Well, also, Monica, on another point, but that's very similar, it's the imposter syndrome. I think we all kind of suffer from the imposter syndrome. Sometimes we wonder, are we in the right place? Should we be here? How do you overcome that?
So I think if many of you are women in STEM, we feel imposter syndrome even more because we're in fields that tend to be male dominated, tend to be very knowledge intense, and they tend also to be more genderized. And then you add a PhD on top of it, and then you feel even more because you know how much you don't know. And it just becomes I have to tell you, I had a feeling of imposter syndrome just thinking about this question, because I'm not an expert in imposter syndrome, but you then have to step back and say, imposter syndrome is a feeling. It is what we feel. And that feeling comes from a couple of things. It could be internal. It's, we think a little bit more than we need to about certain things, but it could also be externally driven. And I'll give you an example. When I was offered this position as a dean, this is my first dean's role. One of my colleagues at another institution came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm surprised you're moving to a dean's role," almost as if questioning my ability to deliver on this role. And I've been fairly successful. I think I can say that looking at 5 years, but it made me pause. It made me pause so strongly and doubt myself for a little while, that am I even ready for this role that I'm agreeing to take on? But when you step back and say, okay, this is a feeling that I developed because somebody else said something to me, that made me say, okay, I need to step away from this. And so, that feeling arises over and over again. I think however much you practice, there will be situations when we always feel, I don't know enough. Am I qualified? I think women, we tend to do it more to ourselves. And so again, very self-conscious practice. When those feelings of doubt come in, I have to remind myself to step away. And again, that practice of looking back on a Friday at the rest of the week is a really strong reinforcement. You recognize, yes, this could have gone better, but you will always have more things that you can say, we made a difference, I made a difference. And so recognizing when that feeling is coming on, and recognizing that we are perfect in our own unique ways. I was going to say we all have imperfections, but I don't want to position it negatively. We are perfect in our own unique ways. What you have, I will not have, but there are things I have that you may benefit from. And I think recognizing that that as a whole we complement the situation, that's important. And I think, so those are two things I keep in mind. Is this is a feeling, this is not coming from a factual place. It is coming from inside me or outside me, and I can control both of those. And then the third element is, I have my own strengths, and those strengths are valued by others, and they will be valuable for the situation. So how I dealt with this when I was like, I don't know about imposter syndrome, I'm not an expert in it, but I have experienced it in my own unique way. And my opportunity was to present how I handle it. But I'd love to hear from you, but I want to be mindful of time.
No, we have time. So if you guys want to jump in, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I think about it, and I think for me, it's totally different for everybody, because everybody's trying to just make their way, for themselves and their own careers, and everyone's path and day and week and month and life it's different. That journey is going to be different. I think when I think about imposter syndrome, I think back to times where I felt uncertain and incapable. And man, I was in some analytical team meetings with some PhDs, and I was like, I am not going to discover the next blockbuster drug. Like, I'm not going to be the one that identifies that chemical reaction that is unique, that's going to change like everyone's lives. But at the time, when my responsibility was to look at the data and to understand what the trends were, and I was so green, and I was so new in my career, and everyone was just like, like talking about it like they knew it, and it was like back of their head. They were so comfortable, and I was really uncomfortable, like super uncomfortable. I was really nervous, like my heart's racing. You can feel your breath up here, and I would have to speak about my data, knowing everyone in the room knew way more than me about it. That was my experience with what I felt like imposter syndrome. I was like, nobody else in my family does what I do. I don't know none of my friends at the time were doing, and now I have lots of science girlfriends, like lots of them. And, but I just felt really, that was my area of like, oh man, I'm fish out of water. I felt like I was maybe going to be like publicly shamed or something. But I think how we overcome that is what I talked about earlier, like resilience. Resilience isn't a gift. It doesn't just come. It's not free and it's not easy. It's something that you have to actually build, and you have to put yourself through this fire, this constant fire of refinement. And all of a sudden you're building. And then all of a sudden one day you're the one that understands the data. You're the one that is able to speak to it. And you're the one that's put yourself through that rigor and that experience to then mature. I love what you said about maturing in your career. And then I think for me personally, that imposter syndrome has mostly gone away. Okay, it all totally has actually, thankfully. And I've turned this corner of now I have this mindset of coming into the room like, I know what I know I'm badass. And there are a lot of badass people around me that are going to help me solve this problem. We're going to do it together. But I think I was just so nervous when I was early in my career about all the responsibility that everybody else knew what I didn't know. And I thought I was supposed to get up to speed in a second. It takes work and it takes grit and it takes refinement.
I was just going to say just some takeaways. I often think people say to me, oh, Michele, what's some advice that you would give, like young entrepreneurs or young STEM individuals? And a few of the takeaways are, one is people tell me, I'm my worst critic. I'm super hypercritical because I started in an industry where I was like, I have to do the best and then better, right? I have to be able to sit at the table with these gentlemen who have been here a really long time. The other thing is, get the racket out of my head. There are facts, like the fact is this, and I'm saying, oh, are they going to second guess me? No, that's just a racket in your head. So just know that you could push through that. It's okay to be uncomfortable. You don't get greatness being comfortable. You don't. It's all of those times where you're really uncomfortable that you push through, that you're in that meeting or whatever it is in any position, or think back in your day or just today, where was I feeling really uncomfortable? You've got to get out of that. Like you just have to push through it. And then the other thing is, I just had some great thought, and clearly I'm uncomfortable because I was but be vulnerable and don't be afraid of failure. That's really it. Early on, I was so like in my earlier portion of the career, I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot fail. And that was the worst mindset. I should fail because people don't move the needle if you don't fail. How many times have if you're in a sports team and you say, oh my gosh, we lost that. Well, how did we lose it? Well, we're a team. Let's look at it. It's not an individual, and let's learn from it. And that's kind of the mindset. And as I've, moved my career, elevated my profile, elevated myself as a professional, as, a community leader, those are the few takeaways I would say. Don't be afraid of failure. Be vulnerable. Move the needle, and just kind of, be yourself. And it's okay to be uncomfortable.
Great segue to the last question that I have before I turn it over to the audience for questions. So we've talked about the importance of diversity in STEM, and just curious if you could share how you're using your platform or your position to encourage more underrepresented students or underrepresented individuals to pursue STEM careers. I don't know, whoever wants to start.
I'll start. We'll start on this end because I was wind up at the. No, it's funny because now what I do is I do a lot of outreach, and I am very involved in the community and the professional community and supporting. And what I do is I do a lot of talks. We have I'm in the Ocean Monmouth County area. We have a high profile. We have Mates Academy for students that are involved in engineering and math and sciences, and some high tech technology high schools, and they're asking us to come out and speak with the students. And I just find them extremely engaging, and it's extremely rewarding to me. So in those capacities, we do it through philanthropy with our organization, with our company, where I'm making sure I'm involved. I make sure I go to events. I talk to people. I'm really out there engaging and really explaining, listening to where they're coming from and giving them opportunities. Professional women in construction, professional women in building. We're going out to events and we're talking to students and to people who are maybe wanting to change their careers, and giving them the opportunity to talk with us and get feedback, or give them opportunities to brainstorm or think tank. potential opportunities for STEM. And I think it's really great. And I think that's one of the things that I personally have been on a mission to do. And, I'll continue to do that as we grow and diversify.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are so many ways to be able to use our platform or our position. And one thing I wanted to definitely make sure every single person in this room knows, no matter what level you are, every single one of us has a platform and a position now because we're in industry to open the doors for other women and underrepresented groups. And I say that simply, a simple technique that I use, and I've been able to really it's so easy. It is so easy. Open your eyes when you're at a table and observe the body language around the table, and you're listening to the conversation, you're seeing the back and forth, and just, even if let me put it this way. Everybody's got something to say, but there are people who have not been invited to speak, and they are not up for the challenge of trying to bully their way in, or be louder than the other person, or cut somebody else off, because it's not polite to cut people off. It's not polite at all. But then when people are going and going and going, what we can each do for one another is say, hey, Mike, do you have something to say? Or invite anyone into the conversation. Mike is always going to speak up. I'm just saying. He doesn't need an invitation, but there are a lot of people that do, especially early career professionals who are, like I was saying, I was nervous in that analytical, phase. Like if somebody didn't invite me, I may have just stayed quiet because I was too nervous about not knowing what I don't know, and I feel like I should. So the point is, invite each other into the conversation. Open the door and just say, hey, I haven't heard you say anything. I know I see something up there, and I make it fun. Like, hey, I see something up there. I know you got something to say. And then they speak, and then all of a sudden they can relax. Their fears are alleviated. So that's one thing. We can all do that with our platform. Number two, we, at our levels, we have opportunities to influence hiring decisions, and we can have opportunities to look at candidates coming in and really just understand, like, let's make sure that we have a diverse set of candidates, and there are a lot of laws around this now, and we absolutely abide by them. But we can advocate not to say, oh, we have to fill a black and white box around some group. What we need to do is really look at the qualifications and make sure those qualifications are coming through, and make sure we're looking at a diverse set of talent. The other one was, and this is so simple, but it's, to me, I just see it. I can't not see it. When I'm looking at how the world was pre-women really entering to industry, there are, just simply looking at slides. When you have slides and teams are being introduced, not just having the woman tacked on the end, just because there were 5 men before, not just having the woman. Let's be equitable. How's an equitable way to visually design things to make people think that it's fully equitable? And a simple way is just last name alphabetical order. Easy. And then just make that the ordering. And those are little simple things, instead of just tacking on the woman as an afterthought, or the underrepresented group as, oh, they finally made it. It's just really thinking how we integrate equity in everything we do. Absolutely everything. We need to open our eyes and see it. Oh, sorry.
Short thoughts. So in addition, everything that Michele and Joanne said, but with my emphasis on academia, a lot of my effort went into introducing creative ways of getting women involved in technical careers. And that meant revising curriculum and so on. And we had some really successful outcomes there. But I break it up into 3 aspects. One is, of course, that fundamental, what we need to do on an ongoing basis. Mentorship is really important. And for many of us, being good mentees in the beginning, but then giving back. And that's been a lot of my effort, is a one-on-one mentoring. And then, find avenues or opportunities where you can actually lead organizations and affinity groups, which can make an impact. And that's currently what I'm doing. I'm involved. I'm the chair of a pretty cool organization, Women in Management Education. And we're doing some really interesting stuff in just empowering and developing women to take on more leadership roles, because this is an 800 people organization. About 300 are pretty active. But if each of those 300 women felt that they were ready to take on more, we've just made a difference in so many ways. So, to add to what
Great. Thanks, guys. I'll turn it over to the audience for questions. You've heard all of my questions. I think I've run out. So if you guys have questions, feel free to walk up to the microphone and ask.
You're invited.
Yes. While you guys are coming up, I will say one of the things that we try to do is to get students to actually interact with STEM professionals, because we always say you can't be it if you don't see it. So thank you for taking the time to go out and do that. I think that's so incredibly important.
So something that I think I heard a lot from all of you is a theme of being the only woman in the room or at the table. So I'm wondering if any of you have ever dealt with a situation where there was already a woman at the table and maybe she was a little bit protective of her space and unwilling to share. And, how do you deal with that in a amicable and productive way without, engaging in any animosity? Thank you.
Love that question. Very good. Very good. That's a great question. Yeah. I'm going to write that question down.
Oh,
gosh.
yes. Situations where one situation that comes to me right away is where I made some strides and it was not well received by unfortunately, another female colleague who was in a equally strong position. I think there were some things that were said behind my back, which is unfortunate. But as I found out, I, had a discussion. I think I'll give you my experience, and hopefully that'll translate into something bigger for you. But my first reaction was to actually let that situation intimidate me, which was not a good place to start. And so as it kind of settled in as to, what had happened in this situation, I really had to go back to, there's a reason I made those strides, kind of going back to whatever that ground zero, that baseline was, is why did I make that move up, which caused this jealousy, or I'll call it jealousy. And that was because it came down to the facts. That is, there was some impact that I had. And the feeling that I was having was coming from unfortunately, another female colleague's insecurity. And so I think having that talk with yourself, it was a delicate situation, so I didn't feel comfortable talking to a mentor right away because I didn't want to put the other person under the bus, even though they had. But I think I was able to talk myself out of it, and kind of move on, and then say, I'm here in this role, and this is my, and I'm not going to do what this individual did. So my role then became very consciously, how do I pull everybody with me, as opposed to kind of trying to now stay, because that's a very natural, somebody said something to me, I'm going to just hunker down and protect myself. And it takes a lot of conscious effort to step away from it, a lot of practice. So when you say resilience and building this self-awareness, I think it really took that. You have to almost kind of go back into yourself and then come out of it in a positive way. So I think I gave it too abstract, but it's.
I was going to say too, a lot has to do with, it's just general people skills. Like for me, there were not a lot of women at the table, but now I am in bigger rooms with like broader, like, higher level people. And that does come into play. And so what I typically do as an example is first seek to understand what is really going on here. Where are they coming from? Maybe do they feel threatened? Maybe it's just that, they like my shoes. I don't know what it is, but sometimes if you kind of engage in that capacity, and typically what I'll do is I'll say, okay, and there have been instances where I have been in rooms with people that it's pretty clear there's an issue here, and I'll just be I'll take the opportunity to reach out to them. And I find that sometimes in those uncomfortable, vulnerable moments that you actually shine and you alleviate any potential issues. What we're thinking, the racket in our head is, oh my goodness, they don't like me, or they're threatened by me, or they're going to give me a really hard time moving forward, in my position in this capacity. And maybe it's just they don't know you, or they have, they think maybe that you're quiet, so they're taking they're reading your body language a little differently. So what I would say in those instances is really engage with that person, maybe reach out to them and just be like, hey, I know that you've been here a long time, and I really appreciate all you and respect, everything that you've done here. Can we grab coffee? I would like to, just get to know you, or I'd like to talk to you about a few things. And I've found in my experience that that's a great way to manage those situations, and typically it alleviates them. And then before you know it, you're fostering better communication and teamwork moving forward.
I was just going to jump in. The other Michele said, when they go low, we go high. That's what it is. The other Michele.
That's great. Yeah, it's so interesting kind of reflecting back. There are several examples along the way, but I think you're totally right. It's really people skills. It's really emotional intelligence and understanding that person is coming from a perspective of potential threat. We potentially they're safe and comfortable and happy and fulfilled, and then someone else comes along and that maybe challenges them in a different way, but then also looks like them and may there is competition there per se, but I like what you said, really about really finding that common ground, really understanding what's going on, and finding the common ground, I think is critical. I've just a little example for this is so crazy to me, but it happened. So I got some feedback from my boss at one of the pharmaceutical companies I worked for. And by the way, this wasn't that long ago. He's like, hey, I just have to tell you this. I was on an enterprise transformation initiative around artificial intelligence and discovery chemistry. And I was the strategy office representative on that. So we had a lot of consultants were coming in. We have these like deep data science, computer experts, and like discovery chemists. So, okay, I can manage that. I definitely do not need to be the expert. And so my role on that team was to make sure that essentially like a glorified program manager, to make sure the conversations that were needing to happen happened, and that we moved forward and there was progress and accountability. And I was responsible for the accountability. And so it wasn't my role to actively contribute to the content in this case. One of the women, there were very few women on this team, but a woman in another organization in the company actually went to my boss and said, Joanna smiles too much. And he was like, I have to tell you, Joanna smiles too much and it's distracting for the rest of the group. Yeah. And I was just like, and he just said, my boss was amazing. And he is an incredible advocate. And he knows, like, I'm just authentically, that's just who I am. Like, I can't tuck that in, like that's who I am. So he was like, don't stop. This is who you are. This is what you bring. This person is coming from, I don't know where she's coming from, but I have to tell you this. So two things happened. I first was shocked. And I was like appalled, like, what? How can somebody criticize this part of my persona? And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, maybe there is something I can take from this, because maybe I am portraying myself in a way that is not necessarily the right way for the right situation. So I took it and learned. Number one, learned. And then I tried to figure out what was her beef, and I was able to actually help her meet one of her business needs, because I had some people reporting to me through a matrix situation, an operations lead in her organization, and she did not know that this woman was doing a rotation with me. Point is, I was able to get to know her and understand her needs and let her also see me and kind of why I bring myself the way I do, because it's who I am, but also learn and check myself. So I think we can learn a lot from each other, even in that discomfort and that competition. So thanks for asking that question.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm not really good with the mics. Okay. This is just I need some guidance. I've been in the business 30 years. I have my master's degree, yet I'm kind of stuck. I've been stuck for I got my master's maybe 10 years ago, and I don't seem to move forward. I don't know exactly what the issue is, except for perhaps it's my issue. I don't see myself going forward or moving up in management or anything like that. I do what I do. I'm a patient service representative, and I've been doing it for about 30 years. I'm very happy because I meet all kinds of patients from all over the world. I can meet them and speak Spanish to them, speak French with them, speak Portuguese with them. That's because that's what I learned all these years, you know. But I don't see myself, I never wanted to go in the hospital business. Nothing to say about that, except that, I mean, I went in the hospital business because I had 2 boys to support. And that was the best way that at that time, that I can provide medical benefits for them, plus a salary to feed them, because boys, I don't know if you guys know, boys each had a house and home. But that necessity has gone. I mean, they're out of the house, they're in their 30s. Now I'm trying to reevaluate myself, because that was not my initial goal way back when I was an undergrad. You know, when I was an undergrad, I had other goals and aspirations, but I don't know if it's like, I'm turning 60 this year, okay? I don't know if it's too late to go back and try to do that, try to do what I initially wanted to do, or just continue on the path that I developed out of necessity, but it's no longer, I mean, I enjoy what I do. That's why I haven't moved up, really, because in management, you don't see a lot of patients face to face. What I've been doing, same-day surgeries, and now in the new practice, I moved from northern New Jersey to the southern region, which has been a big change too. There's a lot of things that go down here in the south, not to say that doesn't go on in the north, but I had to learn to it. I don't know, you know, I'm just saying. I don't
So,
expect any words, you know.
we can definitely take we are at time, but you can do, and we can I can talk to you afterwards if you'd like. I would love to, but happy to.
We'll do that since we're at time. Want to be respectful, but I just want to first of all thank this panel. I mean, you guys are amazing. I feel like I have 3 new best friends. So thanks so much, and thank you guys for being here today. Really appreciate it.